is Sherry, and I am so excited to be with you this morning. I'm so happy to be here and to be learning all about God and Jesus and His words that we find in the Bible. Let's sing the B-I-B-L-E song, Bible.
The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E. The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E. The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E.
Read it backwards, read it forwards, read it backwards. I for your insides, for your outsides, for your insides. A, make you brave, make you bold, make you brave. L-E, love forever, ever, ever. B, read it backwards, read it forwards, read it backwards. I for your insides, for your outsides, for your insides. B, make you brave, make you bold, make you brave. L-E, love forever, ever, ever.
The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E. The B-I-B-L-E, yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God, the B-I-B-L-E.
B, read it backwards, read it forwards, read it backwards. I for your insides, for your outsides, for your insides. A, make you brave, make you bold, make you brave. L-E, love forever, ever, ever. B, read it backwards, read it forwards, read it backwards. I for your insides, for your outsides, for your insides. B, make you brave, make you bold, make you brave. L-E, love forever, ever, ever.
That is such a fun song. The Bible is all the words of God put into one book. It's such an amazing book. And in it, we find all the true stories and accounts of people who had faith in God and who lived before us and how they lived out their faith. Over the past few weeks, we've been learning all about how Jesus has power over different things. The first week, in the first lesson, we learned how Jesus has power over sickness. And in lesson number 2, we learned that Jesus has power over nature. Our memory verse is from Matthew 28:18. And it says, Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Jesus is God's Son, and God has given him authority over everything. In this lesson, lesson 3, we will see how God gave Jesus authority over death. We're going to look at some true Bible stories and accounts that show that Jesus has power even over death. Here, watch these videos that tell the story of a young boy and a girl that Jesus raised from the dead.
Everyone had been waiting for Jesus, and when he came back, a crowd was there to welcome him. Just then, the man in charge of the Jewish meeting place came and knelt down in front of Jesus. His name was Jairus, and he begged Jesus to come to his home because his 12-year-old child was dying. She was his only daughter. While Jesus was speaking, someone came from Jairus' home and said, "Your daughter has died. Why bother the teacher anymore?" When Jesus heard this, he told Jairus, "Don't worry. Have faith, and your daughter will get well." Jesus went into the house, but he did not let anyone else go with him, except Peter, John, James, and the girl's father and mother. Everyone was crying and weeping for the girl, but Jesus said, "The child isn't dead. She is just asleep." The people laughed at him because they knew she was dead. Jesus took hold of the girl's hand and said, "Child, get up." She came back to life and got right up. Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were surprised, but Jesus ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened.
Jesus and the widow's son, from Luke chapter 7, verses 11 to 17. The town was rising up slowly in the distance. Walking along the road, leading a large crowd, was Jesus. He was setting a steady pace as he made his way towards the town. The crowd, who included his disciples, had just seen Jesus show his power and his care by healing a servant girl with just a word. As they approached this new town, a town called Nain, they wondered whether Jesus would have another opportunity to show how powerful and caring he was. They wouldn't have to wait long. While Jesus' crowd was still some way off, there was an even bigger crowd coming slowly out of the city gates. As this crowd walked, you could hear the cries and screams of people in mourning. Leading this procession was a widow bent over with sorrow. She had tears streaming from her eyes, and she looked like someone who had lost all hope. Directly behind her were 4 men who marched slowly in unison. On their shoulders they carried a coffin, the coffin of this widow's only son. Her whole life seemed ruined and without hope. Slowly and steadily, the procession moved forward along the road that led out of the town. The cries of anguish continued to echo loudly in the air. It wasn't long before the crowd with Jesus saw the funeral procession. Quickly, the crowd coming towards the city moved off to the side of the road. They all had their heads bowed with respect as they saw the widow leading this procession for her dead son. Everyone stood off to the side except for one person. Jesus stayed standing on the road, directly in front of the widow. When he had seen this lady, his heart went out to her, and he felt such care and compassion towards her. He reached out his hand and said in a soft and gentle voice, "Don't cry." Don't cry? To say "don't cry" to a woman who had just lost her only son? How cruel these words could have sounded. But when Jesus spoke these words, he wasn't being cruel. Jesus could say them because Jesus is the one who has all power, and he cares for people. The men carrying the coffin stood still with shocked looks on their faces. What were they to do? They watched, growing more and more nervous, as Jesus walked up past the widow towards the coffin. Slowly he raised his hand and he touched it. The mourners and the widow gasped in horror. For a stranger to touch a dead man's coffin, it was just wrong. Then Jesus spoke in a firm and steady voice. The words echoed around like thunder. "Get up!" he commanded. Get up? To say "get up" to a dead person in front of their family and their friends, well, that's just cruel. And it's also stupid. Dead people can't get up, they're dead. But when Jesus said these words, they weren't stupid and they weren't cruel, because Jesus is the one who has all power, and Jesus is the one who cares. The men carrying the coffin were horrified. How could this man say such a thing? They were thinking about putting the coffin down to push the man away when they felt the coffin move. And as they slowly lifted their eyes, the widow's son sat up and began talking to them. Gasps and screams and cheers rose from the crowd as they realized that this young man was no longer dead. He was alive! Jesus had shown his power by raising a dead person back to life. The crowds looked on as the coffin bearers quickly put the coffin down. They stood there in astonishment as Jesus reached out and gently took the boy by the hand. Slowly, Jesus helped the boy step over the coffin edge and onto solid ground. He then led the boy towards his mother. She put out her arms carefully, unsure whether all this was happening or whether it was just a wonderful, wonderful dream. As she touched her son with her own two hands, a sudden wave of happiness came over her. This man, Jesus, had cared for her so much that he had given back her son, her only son. Soon the sound of partying filled the air. People were shouting and clapping and jumping up and down. Cheers and praises filled the sky. As people considered what they had just seen, they were overwhelmed with joy. They had seen Jesus show in the most amazing and spectacular way that he cares for people who are hurting. But even more than that, they had seen that Jesus had power like no one else. He could even bring the dead back to life. And so they praised him loudly.
Wow, those are some amazing stories. Jesus brought them back to life. He was able to give them their lives back. That is so amazing. And we find so many stories like that in the Bible that point to the God's glory through Jesus and all the things that he has done. All through the Gospels, we see the power that Jesus has. He has power over nature. He has power over disease and sicknesses. And he even has power over death. Jesus was God. He is God. He was with God in the beginning, which means that he created everything. So all life flows through him. So he has power over life and death as well. There is another true story that we find in the Bible of Jesus bringing someone back to life. But this story is a little bit different than the first two that we already watched. In this story, Jesus brings back Lazarus, who's a friend of his, back to life. Now Lazarus got sick and he died. And after 4 days of being in the grave, Jesus came and brought him back to life. Why do you think Jesus waited so long to get to his friend? Those are some good answers. And I think that too. And I think that Jesus wanted to show the power of God. No one could argue that Lazarus had been dead. It was 4 days ago that he died. So no one would argue that he was dead and buried and in the grave. And no one could argue with the power of God through Jesus when he brought him back to life. Here, watch Lazarus' story.
Stories of the Bible. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. This is Jesus,
Heyo!
who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. While Jesus was on earth, he taught everyone about God's love. He did many miracles and healed people of their sickness. Jesus had a friend named Lazarus who was very sick. He had 2 sisters named Mary
That's okay.
and Martha,
Here you go.
who sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick."
So come on!
But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God."
What?
So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days.
Alright, let's go.
Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea."
Are you sure?
But his disciples did not think this was a good idea because the people in Judea had tried to kill Jesus. But Jesus told them they were going anyway. He said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up."
He'll be okay.
The disciples thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping. So Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead."
What?
And for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him." Thomas said to his fellow disciples, "Let's go too and die with Jesus." When Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Many people had come to be with Mary and Martha because their brother had died. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." "Yes," Martha said, "he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying." "Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Then she returned to Mary. She told Mary, "The teacher is here and wants to see you." So Mary immediately went to him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus's grave to weep.
Oh, let's go too.
So they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she said, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him. "Where have you put him?" he asked them. They told him, "Lord, come and see." Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him?" But some said, "This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" Jesus was still angry and he arrived at the tomb. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them.
Wait, hold on, Jesus.
But Martha protested, "Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus said, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?"
Go ahead.
So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out!" And Lazarus came out, his hands, feet, and head wrapped in cloth.
Hello?
Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go."
Wahoo!
Many of the Jews who were there believed in Jesus, for he had raised Lazarus from the dead.
God is so amazing. I have a quick experiment that we're going to do this morning that shows how amazing God is. And all the materials you can find in your own kitchen, so you can try this at home with the help of your parents. What you will need is a cup of milk, some dish soap, Dawn works best, food coloring, red, blue, and yellow, a Q-tip, and a paper plate. All right, here's my helper, Andrew. Here's all of our things that we have. Yeah, okay, put it down. All right, so the first thing we need, Andrew, is the milk. Can you pour the milk into the plate?
Okay.
Real careful, real careful. Good job.
It's not going.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Now we're gonna put some food coloring in there.
I need a lot of this.
All right, I'm gonna,
No, not you. You got the phone. Am I put this?
yeah, but Mama's gonna help you. All right, so Andrew and I together added our colors. Now, and it's hard to see, but we have blue and red, and then we mixed red and yellow together. That will make orange, and blue and yellow together to hopefully make green. We also put some soap on our Q-tip. See the soap on our Q-tip? All right, now Andrew, you touch the Q-tip right there in the middle of that green one. Just touch it.
See,
Move your head. Wow! You don't have to move it around, just touch. Just touch. Watch what those colors do the moment he touches it. Isn't that so cool?
What?
We're gonna do a couple more times with a fresh, clean Q-tip. See how the colors just move away from it? Now the science behind this is the soap on the Q-tip and the milk react, and the milk moves away. The fat in the milk moves away from the soap, and the food coloring helps you see it. So wherever I touch, it's going to push away from it. Make some really cool pictures. Because God is so amazing. He can do crazy things with just milk and soap and a little bit of food coloring. Now this is just such a small thing that shows the power that God can have and that He has done. And this chemical reaction that we just saw through the soap and the milk, it is an amazing thing. If God can use soap and milk to show His glory, He can definitely use you and me to show the world His glory and how much power and how amazing He is. We can do amazing things through God throughout our lives. The most amazing thing that we can do for God is to tell our friends and families about Him and how much He loves us and all that Jesus has done for us. Use the activity pages that you have in your packet today to share with your friends about how Jesus has power over death, and share these true stories of how Jesus raised people back to life. Well, until next time, remember, live every day for Jesus. Read your Bible every day or have someone read it to you. Put your faith in Jesus and He will be able to do great things in this world through you. Bye. See you next week.